What if pain isn't the problem, but actually the pathway back to you? You're listening to The Leadership Wound, From Pain to Permission. I'm Amanda Rohrer, your host and founder of Authentically You, coaching for embodied spiritual living and leading. This is where we get honest about the real cost of leadership, the burnout, the pretending, the rejection, and the return to your authentic self. Because this isn't about performance, it's about permission. Welcome to the leader you've always been. True authenticity doesn't create harm and then expect others to accept it because, that's just who I am. When authenticity is divorced from self-awareness or humility and responsibility, it becomes a weapon, not a witness to our authentic self. Hey there, and welcome back to The Leadership Wound. I'm Amanda Rohrer, your host and guide. Today we're going to be talking about a hot topic in leadership circles, and that is authenticity. You've probably heard it or maybe even said it. I'm just being real. I'm just saying the truth. Come on. I just need to get this off my chest. And while those words can sound like authenticity, sometimes what we're really doing is offloading or verbally abusing or even reflecting what is inside of us. Sometimes what we call being real is actually just being reactive. So today we're going to be honest about what authentically you really means and what it absolutely does not mean. Because in a culture that celebrates boldness but often avoids emotional responsibility, authenticity has been misunderstood. And in leadership, that misunderstanding can leave a lot of damage in its wake. Trust me, I know. A few years ago, I had a leader come to me after a meeting to let off some steam, or so I thought. They had held it together publicly, kept their composure during the meeting, at least on the surface. But the moment we were alone, the floodgates opened. They unleashed everything that they had been holding in. No filter, no pause, just one long, intense outburst directed at me. And when they were done, they said, "Sorry, I just needed to get that off my chest." Now, I know that to that person, they were just trying to express authentically how they were feeling. But what I heard and felt was someone leading from unprocessed emotions. It wasn't vulnerability, it was an emotional outburst. And here's the thing, honesty without self-awareness becomes a weapon. And in this case, it wounded more than it healed. Not just me that day, but many others who ever got caught in their crossfires. And I get it. If we're all being honest, most of us have been on both sides of this dynamic. We've been the one on the receiving end of someone else's emotional overflow. And we've also been the one who didn't pause long enough to process our own emotions before speaking. We've all had moments where our inner chaos leaked out onto others in the name of, quote unquote, being real. And as leaders, if we're not careful, we can allow our feelings about someone or some situation to become a reflection, a mirror of our own unprocessed emotions. In the moment, we think we're reacting to them, but what we're really reacting to is us, our disappointment, our fear, our frustration, our need to be seen, our fear of losing control, or even the old wounds and trauma triggers that we never dealt with. But here's what I've learned in my own healing journey. Authenticity is not a license. It's a responsibility. It's not a license to do whatever we feel. Before we explore what authentically you means, we need to be clear about what it does not mean. Authenticity is not a pass to say everything you're thinking without wisdom. If it were so, life might be a lot more simpler because we wouldn't have to think so much about what we say. But personally, I know I don't want every thought I think to become public knowledge. It's also not an excuse to lead from unresolved pain, or a license to be rude, dismissive, or domineering. Just because you have the title boss doesn't mean you get to boss people around. And lastly, authentically you does not mean you are justified to react and then call that behavior being honest. And then expect others to accept it because, well, that's just who I am. When authenticity is divorced from self-awareness or humility and responsibility, it becomes a weapon, not a witness to our authentic self. So let's talk about what authentically you really does mean. Recently, I heard a really good definition of what authenticity is by Ritu Bashin, an expert in authentic leadership. She defines it as a consistent practice of choosing to know who you are, to embrace who you are, and to be who you are as much as possible so that you feel more connected to yourself. In a nutshell, authenticity is a practice you choose that reveals and reflects who you are in all aspects of your living and leading, which leads to a deeper question. Who or what are we genuinely reflecting? Is it who we are now, or who we wish we could be? Or is it who we are uniquely created to be? As created beings, whether we believe in God or not, we are all made in the image of God. And if God is our source and we are created out of his love and in reflection of him, then his character is woven into the fabric of our being. That means his qualities like love and compassion, truth, justice, humility, creativity, and mercy are not just ideas, they're imprinted into our spiritual DNA. Authenticity, then, isn't about doing whatever we feel in the moment. It's about reflecting the one who made us. It's about letting our leadership be shaped by the character of God within us, not the chaos around us. This very premise eliminates the idea that authenticity is a license to be a jerk or let our ego drive us or to be self-serving. In fact, it drives home the complete opposite. It reveals that authenticity becomes a responsibility on our part. We are then reflections. If we are made in the image of God, then authenticity means aligning with the source of our life, our Creator. It means reflecting that image and not distorting it. It means honoring the character traits that we were created to carry, like love that restores, and justice that protects, a humility that listens, a mercy that softens, and a truth that heals. Oh, how our world needs that kind of leadership right now. Leaders who model and influence others to do likewise. But that kind of authenticity, it does demand depth. It calls us to slow down, to reflect, and to embody, not react. So how do we become an authentic person who is not swayed by the pressure to perform or conform and who shows up with integrity and intention in every space, with every person? I'd like to suggest that this happens in two distinct ways. Authenticity begins with living from a place of clarity, presence, and emotional honesty. You cannot give what you don't presently have. Potential just does not work in this space. Reality is what counts. You can't fake it till you make it when it comes to authenticity. Which leads me to the second. Authenticity invites us to take radical ownership of our inner world so that we don't lead from our wounds, but from our wholeness. But this will require a brave reflection because it asks us to slow down long enough to notice what's going on beneath the surface. The iceberg that's under the surface, it's there, but on the surface you can't see it. And just because you can't see it as you sail along in life doesn't mean it's not there. Authenticity means I own and I am responsible for how I show up in the world. My responses, or should I say reactions, are not caused by others or situations. Authenticity then comes from a place within us, not external. And it invites us to pause and to process our emotions before we speak, and to take full ownership of how we show up. And in the pause, when we take it, we can remind ourselves to be rooted in who we are and not to react to how we feel in the moment. We can live in alignment in the pause with our values and God-given identity rather than be swayed by the pressures around us and outside of us. We can show up with integrity and intention in every space with every person. Because when we don't take the time to process our emotions, we then project them. I've been in many conversations where people were clearly projecting their stuff onto me, and I still left scratching my head wondering, is this really about me? Did I do something wrong? Or is this about them and their issues? That type of projecting by others and the confusion that it causes in us is often coming from the fact that we have not taken time to examine what's going on beneath the surface. It's why emotional awareness is such a vital part of authentic leadership. But it does take time, and it does require the ability to have compassion on ourselves. Yes, I said compassion on ourselves, because we have to learn how to become emotionally aware of how we're showing up in the world. It also means that we must be diligent about befriending our emotions. As leaders, we cannot afford to have a complicated or avoidant relationship with our feelings, because unacknowledged emotions, they don't disappear. They drive behaviors in hidden ways. Emotional avoidance leads to emotional leakage. But when we welcome our emotions as messengers, not threats, we lead more with wisdom and clarity and compassion, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. But for all of these reasons, it is also why many people choose not to live from or take responsibility in these areas. Healthy leadership requires hard work, and sadly, many either refuse to do it or they don't know how to do it. It's why we have a lot of leadership wounds. It's why we have people walking around with hurt, and hurt people often hurt other people. Becoming an authentic person means building rhythms of self-awareness, not for performance, but for presence. It's about choosing integrity over impulse and wholeness over hurry. Now, I know these are hard for doers because I'm one of them, but we must prioritize being over doing if our doing is truly going to lead to the flourishing of humanity. This is the heart of authenticity, reflecting our original source of life. If all of humanity were to reflect God with their slice of uniqueness, we would be living in such a different world. Can you imagine? Our authenticity would then be a magnet, drawing in others, inviting them to follow our lead. Because authenticity is like a magnet, attracting like-mindedness. Jesus was the greatest example of this, and 2,000 years later, people are still following after his example because he models first what he asked others to do. He says, I do only what I see the Father doing. I cannot do anything other than who he is and what he does. I reflect the will of the one who has sent me. And likewise, Jesus has been calling his followers to follow in his footsteps, to authentically reflect the one who sent them. True leadership is influence, not control. And influence doesn't come from dominance or charisma. It comes from an embodied presence, from the quiet strength of someone who is integrated, available, and safe to follow. So let me lead you with this. The more aligned we become with our true source, with God, the more freely we can lead from a place of peace instead of pressure, wholeness instead of the hustle. When we live and lead authentically, we embody the very qualities that this world is so aching for. It's the humility, the compassion, courage, truth, and presence. Authenticity isn't just a leadership strategy. It's a posture of the heart. And when we embrace it fully, we become leaders who don't just get things done. We become leaders who reflect all of what the world desperately needs. As you prepare yourself to take a pause and to reflect on your own authenticity, here are a few questions to sit with. Where in your leadership have you confused emotional release with authenticity? Are there moments where your realness may have crossed into reactivity? How are you building rhythms of self-awareness so that your presence is safe, grounded, and clear? And lastly, what does it look like to lead with integration? The integration of your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spirit. Spend some quiet time away with these questions. Journal, reflect. Maybe even give yourself permission to take a personal retreat. Give yourself permission to invest in you. Let yourself grieve what needs to be grieved and celebrate what is emerging. Or maybe it's just simply being still long enough to hear your own voice again. And if this episode has stirred something in you, especially as you sat with these reflection questions or felt a tug on your own heart, I want to encourage you to stay with it. Don't give up if it gets hard. But also, don't think that you need to figure it all out on your own, because we are not meant to live in isolation. We were meant to live in community. So talk these things out with those who you trust. And if during that time of reflection you say to yourself, wow, this is bigger than me, I need a guide, I'd love to help you. Coaching others through these things is not only what I specialize in, it's the work I've personally done over the last 25 years. And I can help you guide yourself back to your authentic self. I also offer a free 30-minute growth plan consult where we look at what's keeping you stuck. We clarify what leadership looks like for you, and we map out a way forward towards wholeness, confidence, and purpose. You can check out the show notes for more details on that. It would be my honor to support you in stepping into leadership that actually feels like you. Thanks for tuning in to The Leadership Wound. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited to continue this journey with you. If you're ready to stop performing and start leading authentically, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and at my website, authenticallyyou.org, for more inspiration and free resources. Until next time, lead like you.